Hi, I'm Kristen Cox, and it's such an honor to be part of this amazing conference that the Policy Circle is putting on. And today I'm going to talk about the illusion of progress. What do I mean by that? Well, government is filled with really good people who want to make a difference, and yet government can do a lot of things that don't yield really good results. And in fact, think about this. All breakthrough results came from a change. But not all changes lead to breakthrough results. So how do we know what changes we should make and which ones don't really matter? In fact, they can make things worse. They can consume limited time and resources and not provide real outcomes for the people who need them. And it's tricky because in government, we can use a lot of cool words: transformation, integration, duplication of effort, streamline, ignite, a new transformation of the workforce, efficiencies. We can wrap up all of our changes in a lot of buzzwords that sound really great, but they really don't result in anything of substantial impact. And that's what I want to spend my time today. Those of you who are in government or running for office or interested in just playing a role and having a voice in government, the ability to distinguish between the illusion of progress and real progress is, in my mind, one of the most important skills you can develop. Now, to make this easy for all of you, I have a list called the Seductive 7. I use the word seductive by design because it means it traps us. It's very alluring, very seductive. And the Seductive 7 are solutions organizations jump to that give us the illusion of progress, but really don't make a big difference. And here you can see them. When we think we need more money, more technology, more data, another reorganization, you can see the full 7. And I don't have time today to go through all of these, but I will go through a couple of them so you can see what I mean by these seductive traps. Now, what's tricky about these is sometimes you actually may need some of these tools. You may need more data in some situations or a piece of technology. So I'm not saying you never use these, but these are just tactics. They're never by themselves the solution. And when we can start to distinguish that when somebody says they need more money, is this really the solution? Is this really going to solve the problem? We can start having more meaningful impact. And I would give you one more thing to think about. That is that most problems aren't worth solving. So the ability to hone in our ability to distinguish between what problems really matter, which ones we should focus on, and which ones we can ignore is really, really important. So I'll go through a few of these examples so that you get a sense of what they mean. So let's talk about this concept of smart cities. Very big buzzword nowadays. Lots of cities and local governments have hopped on the bandwagon of embracing technology to make their cities smart, to have the Internet of all things, to connect everything, and somehow that's magically going to transform some of our urban cities' biggest challenges. Interestingly enough, this happened, the smart cities phenomenon started back in about 2010, and MIT just came out with an interesting report that said, despite all of the efforts and to hawk around smart cities, most of these efforts have failed to really yield big results on some of the biggest issues that cities face. So why did smart cities take off? Well, technology, right? This idea that if we have more technology, more sophistication, more cool features and benefits, that somehow our problems will go away. In reality, think about affordable housing or economic development or crime, for example, big issues that cities face. Those are issues around policy. Those are issues around how do our existing resources get used. Now, can you use technology to help as a tool in fighting crime so that you cover all blind spots officers may have or police officers may have? Sure. But the bigger issue is, how do you reduce crime in the first place? What policies or zoning policies do you need to have in place to make housing affordable in cities? How do you really deal with economic policy that deals with blight in a big way? Those are policy resource issues. This isn't about technology. And while smart cities may in some areas help us in small little ways, great. But it's not going to give us by itself the big breakthroughs that we need in our cities. So that by itself, just distinguishing, wait, I hear a new cool piece of technology, this new trend, to step back and question it. Part of this is about being an independent thinker and questioning basic assumptions. Would putting technology or the Internet of all things really solve affordable housing issues in the city? Well, probably not. And what's required to have great government is to question it. Will this really yield the big results that we need? And when I say big, if I hear people say we had a 3% reduction in water use, that's not a big result, right? So that's one example of how the idea of more technology can take people down this path and consume a lot of time and attention, management time and attention, resources. We get moderate results, but the big problems still remain right in front of us. All right, many of you have been to fast food places, I'm sure, and you've seen the garbage can where when you're done, you're supposed to put your garbage in the trash. Well, here it was interesting. For many years, people would accidentally, or just not thinking about it, throw the whole tray into the garbage can, not just the food. Well, fast food companies tried to train people to think differently. They would put up signs in front of the garbage can, please do not put your tray in the garbage can, but people kept doing it. So what did fast food companies do? Well, they made a simple change. The trays are rectangular, and they made their garbage can lids round, so it would be impossible to throw the tray away. Why do I use this as an example? Well, more training, communication, marketing, branding, that's another of the seductive 7. We have this belief that there's a lack of information, and that if people just had more information, their behaviors would change. We do this all the time in government, right? Try to convince families who maybe are on welfare to act differently, or, it goes on and on. But we often mistake knowing for doing. For example, we all know we should eat better, get better sleep, exercise, eat less sugar, and yet many of us fall short of that, right? So what we're more interested in is what's the actual constraint in the system? What's the policy or the measure or something in the operations that's making it difficult for people to make the choice naturally, to behave what's in their best interest, and from our opinion, what's blocking them from making those good decisions, and try to instead of trying to train them and convince them, how do we just make it natural part of their behavior? So here's an example. I live in Utah, which is a dry part of the country, and in the western part of the United States, there's often drought. And there's a lot of campaigns everywhere in, this part of the United States, little cities and states, trying to convince people to conserve water. Hey, we live in a dry state, use less water, lots of marketing campaigns, billboards, radio ads, etc., to convince people to behave differently. Yet despite all of these campaigns, water utilization in these areas didn't significantly change. Why? People have knowledge, people are good, they know that they should use less water and conserve. Why aren't we seeing fundamental change? Well, here's another fact. In some of these areas where they've done these big campaigns, the water is relatively cheap. For example, a gallon of gas is $4 plus, per gallon. A gallon of milk is $2 to $3 a gallon of milk. In comparison, a gallon of water is 1/10 of a cent. Water can be subsidized by many different revenue streams, sales tax, sometimes property tax. And so the actual price, the direct price of water in many areas can be fairly cheap and inexpensive. So if you have a resource that's inexpensive, people tend to overconsume that. They can use a lot of it. They look at their bill. It's not too expensive. They'll continue to consume despite the billboards they see on the street. Now, it's hard to change water rates, right? That's a more difficult political challenge for many, many reasons, and there's a lot of nuance that you have to go into when you think about pricing water. Having said that, though, trying to convince people to act differently when the system is perfectly designed to get the outcomes we're getting is crazy. People are behaving a certain way, they're making choices and decisions, processes are happening the way they happen because the system is designed for that. If you want to change the outcome, change the system, the policy, the flow of work, the measures, rather than just trying to have the system in place and then try to convince people to work against the system. It won't work. You'll maybe get little pockets of success, no doubt, but big systemic change, you're not going to see it. Another common seductive 7 in government is this idea of reorganization. That somehow if I move things around on the org chart, that direct services will get significantly better. You'll see this at local government, state government, federal government, and it's true across all parties. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, because we believe that somehow if I change the administrative functions, that how services delivered will automatically or somehow magically improve. So imagine an analogy is, let's say you own a manufacturing plant and you have to build cars, and you change and reorg the marketing and communications team so they report to this person now, and finance and technology report to somebody else, and you've shifted offices and spans of control, and do you think that makes any impact on how cars are being built on the manufacturing floor? Not so much. And maybe you'll see a 2% cost savings or something like that, but the fundamental way the car is being built doesn't change. The challenge in government is where value is actually delivered is in operations. It's in the front line, and usually it's very difficult for management to have visibility into that unless they learn different skills and tools to see that. So the idea that we're going to reorganize, and we've seen a lot of this after the pandemic, reorganizations going on. Reorganizing may, at the administrative level, give us a tiny bit of cost efficiency, but that's a fraction of where the money is spent, and it's not where the value is created. Instead, we have to learn to look at operations and where the money's really being spent and figure out how to have better, what we call flow, uninterrupted delivery of services with super high quality for low cost. So another trap to avoid is just thinking a reorg is going to solve the problem. Another common trap, or one of the seductive 7 in government, is the idea that we need more money. Very common. I was the budget director for Utah for 8 years, and so I would see a lot of requests for money coming in. Good people, right? But what we have found that usually, very often, there's hidden capacity in our systems. That is deep, right down on the front line, between that interaction between the customer and the front line. There's something going on there. It's taking too long, and time is money, or the quality isn't quite where we need it to be, or we're in the prison system and people don't get the services they need when they need it, so they recidivate and come right back to the prison system, right? And so often we think we need more money to solve those problems, but the reality is if we don't know how to use the resources we have well, more of them won't solve the problem. Money and spreadsheets and what you see in budgets are just a reflection of what happened. They don't capture the causes of cost. And the causes of cost are, again, things taking too long, a lot of rework, things happening downstream versus upfront, what we call quality at source, quality problems, it taking too long to get somebody the service they need, or we don't get them enough of it. This is true from homelessness to mental health issues, from business permitting to environmental quality spill-ups. The money is just a reflection of how we spend our time and our resources. And if we don't have a good handle on how that's actually happening, we'll always think we need new money. Now, here's what's hard about this. We find what we search for, and we search for what we believe in. And if we don't fundamentally believe that there's hidden capacity in our systems to get better quality, to serve more people for the resources we have, it's easy to jump to more money as the solution. And again, the ways and tools we use to get more money out of, or to get more value out of the resources we have, those are operational tools. And that's a whole different discussion about how to use those. But just the awareness that there are tools and solutions out there to get more out of the resources we have helps discipline ourselves to go deeper, to ask different questions, right? Very often the power of our results came from the right questions. And asking the simple question is, can I get more out of the resources I have? And this is not just about cutting costs. This is about serving people with higher quality, being able to serve more people and meet demand with the same resources, and also getting a triple win. We're not just burning out employees and making them work overtime to do so. In government, we talk a lot about effective and efficient. We want to be effective first, make sure we're doing the right thing, and then we want to be efficient about it to do it incredibly well with the least amount of resources as possible. And when we do those two things well, we usually find that we don't need a lot more money. Poor quality, by the way, is usually one of the biggest cost drivers, and understanding why quality is suffering is just a big deal. Part of the challenge with thinking that we need more money is that we see problems everywhere in our organization, right? Everyone's busy, everyone's overwhelmed, and so we think we need more money everywhere. And I want you to look at this simple slide. It's a very simple system. I know this is not how systems work, but the principle is true. A, B, C, D, E. You can see 5 steps, and you can see that at each step to complete the work, there's a different type of job that needs to happen or a different capability. And so each person in each phase or each step has different capabilities to perform the work. So person A can perform 20 units an hour, person B can perform 16 units an hour, C can do 10, D can do 24 units an hour, and E can do, I think it's 18. By the way, I'm blind, so I did that by memory. I hope that's accurate. So you can think to yourself, and every one of those people will tell you ideas they have, and they'll probably all tell you they feel busy and overwhelmed and they need help and yada, yada. And our tendency is to go try to improve everything. But if you think about it this way, if I put 100 units of work in front of the system at the beginning of an hour, the question is, how much could this system produce at the end of an hour? The actual answer is 10. C can only produce 10. My entire system can only produce as much as my constraint can produce. So even if I did a big project improvement initiative, process improvement initiative at A, and put in new technology and a new data system, and now A can do from 20 units an hour to 40, it still doesn't matter. A passes its work on to B. B still can only do 16. So B passes its work on to C, and C can only do 10. So from everything downstream, D and E only have 10 units to work from. And sometimes I've made my system worse because I've started working on work that's just waiting in the system to be worked on. This is why we get call centers and people waiting for services, because we've started work and we don't have the capacity to complete it. So we start spending money everywhere, and we put the seductive 7 on each one of these A, B, C, D, and E, and we reorg, and we do all this crazy stuff, and the system isn't better. What we're trying to learn and teach people is to focus. Of all the problems to fix, where do I focus? And here, imagine if I could get just C to work better. From C to go to 10 to 15 units. Maybe I have some resources and extra capacity at E and A that I could put to C, and I could offload work C is doing to people who have resources. With no new money, I can make this system hum. I can make all the parts work together rather than worrying how they will each work individually. This basic concept helps us train ourselves to think differently about, do we need more money? How does the system work together? What are all of its parts? And where is stuff getting stuck? Again, there's a lot more to this, but to this very simple concept itself, you'll start to train your brain to understand that I don't need to improve everything. I just need to improve the problems that really matter. So just to sum up, the illusion of progress is very alluring, it's seductive, and it's everywhere. It's hard to overcome because colleagues do it, other states do it, other local governments are doing it, we have vendors pushing it to adapt new technology, to build a new data system, right? Data-driven decision-making, to somehow reorg and hope that our problems will go away. And again, here's the list of the seductive 7. And what I'm cautioning you is this: there is a difference between real progress and the illusion of progress. And how do you know? Well, some simple questions. Is there a very specific goal we're trying to achieve for the customer and the taxpayer, right? The success isn't just, did I launch or implement a new initiative? It is, did I get a clear outcome for the people I serve? Did I reduce crime by 20% in a specific area? Is the cost for delivering this service 25% less for the taxpayer? Do I have measurable and significant outcomes? Right? That sounds so simple, but if we're not seeing those types of things after all of our initiatives and all of our hype and all of our talk, we're engaged in the illusion of progress. And it always goes back to solving real problems for the people we serve. And if we can just anchor ourselves in that, not all the fancy stuff, but anchor ourselves, am I really helping the kid in juvenile detention? What does that kid need to be successful and not come back and be successful in the community? My reorgs, my data systems, interesting, but how's it helping that one kid? If I keep anchoring to that, I have a fighting chance of not getting wrapped up into the illusion of progress. Learning this one lesson, what change matters and what change to ignore, is how we start to make an impact in government and to do better for the people we serve. Thanks so much for your time and attention, and look forward to hearing more from you. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can look for me there. StopDecoratingTheFish.com. There's a diagnostic tool there and some more information of where you can learn more about the Seductive 7. So thanks. Enjoy the rest of your conference.